The drums beat loud like the heart of the village. Feet stamped, hands clapped. Laughter rolled from the elders' mats to the children's bare feet. A marriage had happened. The girl was now a wife. She stood beside him, her wrapper bright, her step slow, her eyes low. He smiled wide for the people, but there was no warmth in it, only pride, the kind that bites. The chief raised his hand. The crowd cheered again. They called it a good match. A rich man's nephew and a humble man's daughter. Even the birds seemed to dance. But the girl's father, standing in the shadows, did not clap. His voice whispered low, "Better married than alone." That's what they say. The girl looked straight ahead. She did not blink. The sun dipped. The drums faded. The cheers vanished into the huts. Then came the night. The fire crackled, but it did not warm the room. He spoke sharp. "You looked at him too long." She said nothing. His eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." The slap came fast. She staggered. The second came harder. Then the third. The wrapper slipped from her shoulder. Her ear rang. Her breath caught. No one came. No one knocked. They said, "It is the first night. A man must teach respect." She lay still on the mat. Her lip bled into the dust. Her eye began to close. Her heart did not beat faster. It beat deeper. In the morning, she stepped outside. The sun touched her swollen face. The women saw. The men looked away. A voice behind a calabash whispered, "It begins." Another said, "She must learn." She did not speak. But something had changed. Her back stood straighter. Her silence grew sharper. She moved like someone listening to more than words. Like someone who had heard something ancient in the slap. Something that would not sleep. She once had a laugh that made children pause and birds turn mid-flight. Her voice was light, her heart wide. But the home behind her teeth was not soft. The stepmother's hands were never warm, and her tongue cut sharper than sugarcane blades. They said, "When a girl has no mother, the world grows taller than her." So they promised marriage, not love. Escape, a new house, a husband, a different kind of silence. He came like thunder, loud, tall, full of eyes, chosen by no gods, only by himself. He did not ask, he picked, like fruit from a low branch. His uncle, the chief, nodded once. That was enough. The village clapped. "She is lucky," they said. He could have picked anyone. The girl smiled, but the smile stayed only on her mouth. At night, her father whispered, "Endure, my child. It is better than loneliness." But even loneliness never struck her face. The first slap came because the yam burned. The second came because the water was late. The third needed no reason. Only a look he imagined, or a word he twisted. Every strike said, "You belong to me." She nodded, not out of fear, but out of listening. She listened to the footsteps outside, to the women who washed clothes near the stream, to the ones who dipped their voices low when they passed her compound, to the old one by the river who chewed cola nuts and spat truth. That one said, "When a woman knows her truth, no man can bury it." So the girl stopped hoping someone would save her. She started counting how many steps it took to reach the tree where justice once lived. She started counting how many women looked away when she passed, and how many looked back, quietly, as if waiting for someone to speak first. She cooked, she swept, she bled into silence, but she never stopped listening. And slowly, the air around her began to shift, not louder, heavier, like the wind that comes before the storm, like the breath the earth takes before it shakes. The singing from the gathering still echoed when he stumbled in, soaked in palm wine and pride. His mouth curled, his voice cut. "You were smiling at him. I saw you." She stood still. "Say it. Say you're unfaithful. She didn't speak. The hand struck. Then again, and again. He dragged her out, threw her to the ground before the neighbors. Say it. She lay in the dust, her hair matted, her mouth bleeding. But she said nothing. No one laughed. A man looked away. A woman clutched her own wrist. A baby stopped crying. Then an old voice broke the silence. This is not correction. This is poison. The speaker did not shout. She whispered like wind through dry leaves. And then the night swallowed them all. For 2 days, the girl did not move. Her door stayed shut. Smoke rose from her compound, but her feet did not cross the threshold. On the 3rd morning, she rose like the sun, slow, steady, burning. She walked with no wrapper on her head. Her cheek was swollen, her arm bruised, but her steps were clear. She found the old woman near the river, chewing cola. I want to know what law protects a woman. The elder smiled, slow and sad. Not the chief's law. The tree still listens. She spoke of a place older than the palace, a circle of elders who answered to no crown, where truth walked barefoot and titles bowed. The court under the great tree does not ask who you married. It asks what was done. The girl nodded once. She returned home as if something had shifted under her skin. Not her bones, her breath. She passed the same people who once turned away. This time they looked again. Not with pity, with wonder. She entered the hut. Saturday. Waited, not for the next blow, but for the right moment. The wind that night was loud, the moon high, the silence between them heavier than all the words unspoken. But somewhere, far off, a drum began to beat, not for celebration, for justice rising. The sun had barely risen when she stood before him, breath steady, hands open. If you touch me again, I will summon the court. He laughed, loud and sharp. You think words will save you? The hand rose again. This time, it cracked louder than before. She didn't fall. She turned. With blood trailing her sleeve and heat burning in her chest, she walked, straight, unshaken, toward the place where truth still listened. The sacred tree stood tall, wrapped in cloth and time. The wind stirred its branches like drums calling the spirits. She stopped before it, lifted her hand. People turned, heads peeked from compounds, feet gathered on dusty paths. Children were pulled back as whispers flew. It was rare. A woman, summoning the court? A woman, speaking first? But she did not flinch. I accuse him. He broke my body. He shamed my soul. Gasps filled the morning. Some clutched their beads. Some looked to the sky. The elders were called. Staffs tapped the earth. Rappers brushed the soil. She stood alone, until the circle formed. Then he came, walking like thunder, pride on his shoulders, his eyes burning with insult. You will regret this. The elders did not blink. The oldest raised his hand. The court has begun. And just like that, the ground between them changed. One stood on silence. The other stood on truth. The elders gathered, their feet firm, their eyes sharp. The sacred tree watched. A staff struck the ground once. Speak your truth. She stepped forward, unwrapped her cloth, turned. Scars lined her back like whip marks on dry earth. The wind paused. A murmur rippled through the crowd. He did not flinch. She was never obedient. I corrected her. A younger elder leaned in. Correction does not spill blood. Silence. Then a voice. I saw her bruised every week. Another. She walked like a shadow, but never cursed him. Another still. Her hands trembled when she served him. He sneered. These are just village women, old and bitter. The crowd stirred. Rappers shifted. Feet shuffled. One more voice rose. Slower, deeper. Then hear mine. The old woman stepped forward, the one with eyes like dusk. She reached for her scarf, pulled it away. A long, faded scar traced her neck like a memory that wouldn't die. She didn't cry. She looked forward. I once stayed silent like her. My daughter grew inside fear. She died in it. No one moved. Even the birds grew quiet. This is not just about her. It is about all of us who bled behind closed doors. The sacred tree stood still. An elder nodded once. Then another. They looked again at the woman with the scars. This time, they saw more than bruises. They saw the weight she carried, the truth she had unwrapped, and the voices she had awakened. The court stood still. The sacred tree cast no shade. Only weight. A voice rang clear. "Kneel!" The word fell like thunder. He laughed. Arrogant. Defiant. "I am the chief's blood." Staffs shifted. Eyes narrowed. The elder replied, "And your blood runs red like any man's." Another voice called, "Kneel, or the spirits of justice will not rest." A drum beat once. Low. Sharp. The sound of shame. The crowd stirred. Some gasped. Others watched in silence. Even the chief remained still. No hand lifted. No face smiled. He turned, looked for support, found none. Sweat gathered at his brow. Feet firm, legs stiff, but they began to shake. The moment held its breath. Then his knees bent. Slowly, grain by grain, his pride crumbled to dust, and the ground received him. The crowd gasped. She stepped forward, the woman he once crushed. Now taller, now louder. Her words rang like a verdict. "I do not need your apology. I need your surrender." He lowered his head. She did not touch him. She did not smile. She simply turned. And in that turn, power shifted, not with a scream, but with silence loud enough to be heard for generations. The news moved like fire through dry grass. It leapt from calabash to doorstep, from mothers to daughters, from silence to shouting. The girl had made him kneel, and the village could not unsee it. The women began to speak louder, their voices no longer hidden behind wrappers, no longer poured only into rivers and mortar bowls. One by one, they stood beneath the sacred tree. Where truth had once bent low, now it stood tall. He struck me too. I bled, but no one believed me. We thought we had no right. The elders met again. They looked to the roots of the tree, where shame once slept, and they spoke. "No man shall raise his hand without the court raising its voice. Every woman has a place beneath the tree. Justice will no longer hide." And so, a new rule was carved. Not into stone, but into memory. The girl did not return to her father's hut. She built her own, near the tree that had listened, near the ground that had held her pain. She grew herbs behind her wall, pounded yam with steady arms, raised her roof without help. And the people came. They came not with gossip, but with questions. What would you do? Where did you find your strength? How do you carry what they tried to bury? She answered without pride, without titles, without fear. And slowly, the name changed. No longer just a wife, or a girl, or a victim. They called her the one who made him kneel. And she never corrected them, because sometimes a name is not a crown. It is a torch. A wise woman once said, "A silent woman carries the fire, but a speaking woman burns the forest of lies." The girl had once carried fire in silence. She had fed it with patience, covered it with cloth, kept it from smoke. But when she finally spoke, the flames found air, and the forest of lies that stood tall around her, it cracked, it curled, it turned to ash. The village saw, and the village remembered. Her silence had protected her, but her voice had freed others. The ones who once whispered behind calabashes now shouted under the sun. The fists that tried to break her had cracked her skin, but could not reach her bone. It was her courage that broke him. Not with fists, with truth. In the land of many proverbs, the people found a new one. When a man raises his hand, he better be ready to raise his knees. And the people laughed, not from joy, but from wisdom. Justice, they learned, does not always shout. Sometimes it stands still, sometimes it waits, and sometimes it rises from blood-soaked dust and walks into the light wearing no crown, only truth. The sacred tree remained. Its branches stretched wider now, its roots deeper. It had heard too many lies over the years. Now, it held stories that no longer whispered, stories that roared. Under its shade, nothing stayed the same. Not the laws, not the women, not the men, and certainly not the silence.